I can't count the number of times my mom has asked me to grab something from the car, or my sister has asked me to get her glasses, and somehow I still misunderstand the instructions. Those small misunderstandings often turn into conflict, and they remind me that communication is more than just talking. It's about communicating effectively, appropriately, and ethically. Hello, my name is Mackenzie Castillejo, and today I'll explain what it means to be a competent communicator. As someone involved in leadership, teamwork, and values close relationships, I communicate with many different people every day. That's why becoming a competent communicator is important to me, to improve both personally and professionally, allowing me to build stronger foundations for relationships and communication skills that will continue to grow in my life. Being an effective communicator means that I understand ways of getting my point across and ensuring that it was received correctly, especially in persuasive conversations, such as when I try to persuade my family to go where I want to eat for dinner. Being an appropriate communicator entails that I know the context of my conversation, as well as knowing who and when the right person to talk to is. For example, when I talk about college, I go to my school counselor. But when I want to talk about school drama, I go to someone more close to me, like my friends and family. Finally, as an ethical communicator, I ensure I have complete transparency and honesty in conversations, and listen carefully to others while having a conversation. I use ethical communication when I always talk to superiors, such as teachers and my parents, and I ensure that I use ethical communication in my everyday life as well. The first element of competent communication is effective communication, which is the purposeful sharing of information, thoughts, and feelings. In section 1.2 of our textbook, the transaction model shows communication as a two-way process where both people exchange ideas and work towards mutual understanding, showing how to effectively communicate your thoughts as well as receive others while in conversation. Let's first look at my formal study on effective communication. I found a scholarly article titled Elements of Effective Communication, written by several professors. In the section on completeness, the author states, communication intends to create meaning and understanding, and therefore needs to be complete in all respects. Incomplete message breeds misunderstanding and faulty interpretation. This quote shows that effective communication depends on being complete and clear. When there are incomplete messages, misunderstandings form. During my informal study, I reflected on conversations where I wasn't sure what to say. While clarity and understanding are important, I believe completeness is the key to effective communication. If you don't fully understand your own thoughts before speaking, it's hard to communicate them clearly. An example from my life was during an ongoing conflict within my club. Before talking about the conflict, I wrote down my thoughts just to make sure that they were complete, organized, and concise. Currently, my strengths as an effective communicator are active listening, organizing my thoughts, and expressing my ideas clearly. However, I still need to improve my skills by avoiding interruptions during conversation, not thinking ahead in conversation, and keeping my messages simple. By continuing to strengthen my listening skills and fully understanding my thoughts before speaking, I can become more of an effective communicator than I already am. After talking about effective communication, we can look at appropriate communication. Appropriate communication is giving messages with clarity, mutual understanding, and respect. I will define it using sections 3.2 and 4.2 from my textbook. Section 3.2 explains how understanding our emotions can help our ways of communication, while 4.2 describes different listening styles based on the situation you are in. Together, these sections show that appropriate communication is about adapting your communication to the people and circumstances around you. My formal study on appropriate communication comes from the article Developing Effective Communication Skills, written by communication specialists. In this section, Communication is a Process, the author emphasizes the importance of knowing your audience. Be aware of your own body language when speaking. Consider the attitudes and knowledge of your intended audience as well, choosing the right medium for the message you want to communicate. This quote shows that appropriate communication requires characteristics such as adapting to your audience, self-awareness, empathy, and choosing the right approach. During my informal study, I thought about a time when I was talking to my pre-calculus teacher. When I need help with class material, I listen carefully and ask questions to better understand the concepts. Other times, we simply have casual conversation to get to know each other. This shows how I adapt my communication and listening style based on the purpose of my conversation. As an appropriate communicator, I can analyze situations and adjust my communication based on the person and the seriousness of the conversation. However, I still have parts I need to improve on, such as self-awareness. I often use humor to lighten the mood, but it doesn't always fit the situation. By continuing to develop my adaptability, empathy, and awareness of others, I can become a better appropriate communicator. Now let's move on to the third and final part, ethical communication. Last but not least is ethical communication, which means communicating with honesty, respect, and clarity. I will define it using sections 3.2 and 4.5 out of our textbook. Section 3.2 explains emotional intelligence, showing that understanding our emotions helps us express them clearly and recognize the right time to communicate them. Next is section 4.5 on active listening. I believe active listening is one of the most important parts of ethical communication because it helps us understand others, respond thoughtfully, and show respect during conversations. For my formal study, I found an article titled What Should We Say?, written by experts in medical ethics. In the section What Should We Say?, the ethical dimension, the author states, "It is morally important why we say what we say, particularly in cases where we say something that upsets the person who is sick or injured." This quote reminds us that our words can greatly affect others. Ethical communication requires speaking with respect and considering others' feelings and well-being. An example of ethical communication in my life occurred during a misunderstanding with a club director on schedules each week. I explained honestly my experience and suggested solutions, such as submitting a schedule each week. This experience showed me how honesty and transparency can resolve conflicts respectfully. There are many examples of times I have used ethical communication in my own life. Oftentimes, this type of communication is seen during times of conflict. I consider honesty, trust, and open-mindedness to be my greatest strengths in ethical communication, especially during conflict. However, I sometimes focus too much on persuading others to agree with me instead of listening to others' perspectives. Recognizing this helps me work towards communicating more honestly and listening more openly. My personal credo contains the following. 1. Ensuring honesty at all times when it comes to conflict in things you do and say. 2. Respecting others' opinions and ideas while communicating. 3. Listening attentively to others while having conversation. And 4. Digest what others say while in conversation and know what you want to reply with. Through discussing these 3 things, we've learned what it means to be a competent communicator. But how does this relate to me? When combined, competent communication is made of effective, appropriate, and ethical communication. These 3 elements work together, helping us know what to say, how to say it, and how to adapt our communication to others. As a student, I have made significant progress towards becoming a competent communicator. Through my communication courses and by practicing effective, appropriate, and ethical communication, I continue to improve by organizing my thoughts, recognizing the right time for conversations, and communicating honestly with others. Now, when my mom asks for something from the car or my sister asks for her glasses, I use the communication skills I've developed to reduce misunderstandings and conflict. By practicing competent communication, I become clearer in my conversations and build stronger relationships with those around me. Here are the sources I've used in this presentation. Once again, I'm Mackenzie Castilleja. Thank you for listening.